This lesson is for XEI 303. Today we're going to be combining like terms, as well as combining like terms when we're given real-world scenarios. So we're going to start with a little bit of a review. We're going to start with the distributive property. So in this first example, I want to multiply 2 times a and 2 times negative 3. So 2 times a gives me 2a, 2 times negative 3 gives me negative 6. So I write that as 2a minus 6. Remember, I stop here because these are not like terms. Now on the second example, this 3 in the back here, you can distribute it like this if you'd like, or you can write that out in front because multiplication is commutative and you can change the order. So we can do 3 times 4y and 3 times negative 7. 3 times 4y gives me 12y. 3 times negative 7 gives me negative 21. In C, now I have a negative 2 to distribute. So I'm going to distribute negative 2 to 3x and negative 2 to a negative 7. So this first term I get from negative 2 times 3x gives me negative 6x. I have to be really careful here when I do negative 2 times negative 7, because that'll give me a positive 14. And in the last example, sometimes students get confused here. Remember, this is a negative 1. If you need to write a 1 there, you can do that, because then you're just doing negative 1 times b. Negative 1 times b gives you negative 1b, which you can write as negative 1b or just negative b. Then negative 1 times negative 1, that gives you a positive 1. And that would be my final answer because these are not like terms. Okay, I'd like you to pause now, and you're going to try the next few examples here, 2a through 2d, on your own. Alright, next we're going to get into our focus skill in isolation. So here we're going to combine like terms. I've got lots of different examples here. We're going to do each one, so we're going to take our time and really get to know how to combine like terms. Now in the first example, I have 6x minus 8x. These are both like terms because both of these have an x involved with them. So I can combine these. All I need to do is look at the coefficient, which is the number out in front. So I take 6 minus 8 and I type that right into my calculator and I would get negative 2. I just attach the x. So 6x minus 8x leaves me with negative 2x. Now in B, I have a few different terms here. I have 4 total terms. 2 terms have an x, and 2 terms are just numbers. Okay, so when I deal with the variables here, the ones with the x's, I'm going to circle 8x and this negative 8x. It's very important that you make sure you group the sign with the variable term. If you forget to do that, some students will just circle the 8x here, and they think that they're supposed to do 8x plus 8x, but really it's 8x and then minus 8x. So in my calculator, I just type in 8 plus a negative 8, or 8 minus 8, and I get 0. Instead of writing 0x, because 0 times x just gives us 0, that term actually cancels each other out. You're left with no x term at all. Then we're going to combine the negative 9 plus 1. So again, in my calculator, I just type in negative 9 plus 1, and that leaves me with negative 8. So all 4 of these terms drop down to a single term, just negative 8. Now in C, again, I want to circle the terms that are like terms. So I have negative 3x here and another negative 3x. So in my calculator, what I type in is negative 3 minus 3. I just keep the same signs in front and just type that right into the calculator. So from here, I would get negative 6x. Okay, so from negative 3x and negative 3x, I get negative 6x. Then once I'm done with those, I usually cross them out so I know I move on to the next terms. Then I have a positive 9 and a positive 2. So I type in my calculator 9 plus 2. I don't need to write in plus 9 because I can't type that into my calculator. So since it's already positive, I just assume it's just 9 plus 2 and I get positive 11. So I write negative 6x plus 11. And this would be my final answer because these are not like terms, so I can't combine them. In D, we have negative 2v here and a positive 5v. So in my calculator, what I type in is negative 2 plus 5. I would end up with 3, and I just attach the v. So this is exactly what I plug right into my calculator, and it gives me this 3. Then I make sure that I attach the v to it. Next up, we have, so let's cross those out since we're done with them. Next up, we have the negative 8 plus the 4. So in my calculator, I type in negative 8 plus 4, and I end up with negative 4. So the final answer here is just 3v minus 4 because I cannot combine these. These are not like terms. Okay, example E is a really good example to show you guys because sometimes I see students who get very confused here and they want to combine 6 minus 3 and they write that as 3xy. but these are not like terms, right? These are not like terms, so I can't combine them. This actually is, it's not really a trick question, but this question here doesn't reduce any further. It just stays 6x minus 3y because these are not like terms. So these are not like terms, so we don't combine them in any way at all. Okay, F is another example that gets sometimes students confused. You see you have x's, right, on all the terms here, but x squared and x, these are actually not like terms. In order for a term to be the same, it has to have the same exact variable and exponent. So because this is missing that 2 here, these are not like terms. So in fact, the only ones that I want to combine here is the 6x squared with the positive x squared. So in my calculator, what I type in is 6 plus, remember this is a 1 in front, a lot of students forget that that's a 1 there, so I end up with 7x squared, and then this negative x here doesn't combine with anything else because it's all that's left over, and I just drop that down, and this would be my final answer, 7x squared minus x. I don't go any further because these are not like terms. Okay, so that would be my final answer. Okay, next up in G, we see 4 terms, and I want to match up the terms that are the exact same. So here I have a 3x squared. Now this 3x squared and this negative 3x squared, these are like terms. Those are the only 2 like terms that I see here with the x squareds. So I take 3 minus 3 in my calculator, and I end up with 0. So instead of writing 0x squared, remember we don't need to write that. We just skip that term because these guys cancel each other out. Okay. Then I have y squared and 4y left over. Remember, y squared and y, these are not like terms. They need to have the exact same exponent, and because this y does not have a 2 there, then they are not like terms. So my final answer here is actually just going to be y squared plus 4y because I cannot combine those 2 terms. Okay, next up in H, I do the same thing. I just go through and I see 4x squared here. Now that 4x squared and this 2x squared, look how I'm boxing this. I'm including the sign here because I want to type into my calculator 4 plus 2. A lot of students will see 4 and they automatically see this minus sign after the 4 and they think I'm supposed to take 4 minus 2, but you know, actually that negative 3 goes together. So that negative sign has nothing to do with the 4x squared or the 2x squared. So you've got to be really careful that you're taking the sign directly in front of the number that you're looking at. So we have 4x squared plus 2x squared. That gives me 6x squared. Now my next term that I would look at, this negative 3x, so I'm just going to, sorry I forgot to cancel those out once I'm done with them. This negative 3x and this negative 4, they're not like terms, so I actually bring both of these down. Since none of these can combine anymore because none of them are like terms, that would actually be my final answer here. Okay, we're going to finish off with a few that are a little bit longer. Again, you do the same thing, you just go term by term. So here I have an 8x. So I'm going to box that 8x. I'm going to box anything else that has an x with it. So I see plus 4x, minus 7x, and then that plus 2x. So in my calculator, I can type all of this in all at once if I want. I type in 8. Then plus 4, since it's a positive 4 here, then minus 7, because that's a negative 7, then plus 2. So I compute all of that all at once, and then I can cancel all of them out at the same time. So it's just saving you a little bit of extra time. Okay, so anyways, I get 12 minus 7, which is 5, plus 2. So this would give me 7 in my calculator. So I need to make sure that I attach an x back to that. Okay, so I have 7x, and then I'm going to do the last terms left over. I have a positive 9 and a negative 13, so in my calculator I just type in 9 minus 13, and that gives me negative 4. Now these two terms are not like terms, so I leave that as 7x minus 4. This is my final answer. Okay, next up in problem J, I start with this 5n. And I see that I have another term with just an n. Now, I'm not boxing this one here because that has the n squared, so I know those are not like terms. So I have 5n and negative 4n, and in my calculator I just type in 5 minus 4. So I get 1 there, and I attach the n, so 1n is the same as just n. So you'll see me writing just the n here instead of the 1 out in front, but it's okay if you write the 1 in. Alright, so then I cancel those out since I've used those. Then I look at this 2. I see a positive 2 here. And I also see a positive 8. So in my calculator, again, I type in 2 plus 8. I would get 10. So I have n plus 10. Now that doesn't have a variable, so I don't need to attach anything to it, and I'm done with that. And I just want to show you real quickly how somebody can make an error on this. So without boxing the term in front, the sign in front of here, some students will see 2, and then they'll subtract 8 from that, because they think, oh, 2 minus 8. But again, that negative sign here goes with the 3n squared. It does not belong to the 8. It does not belong to the 2 at all. So you want to make sure you're always boxing the sign or circling the sign that's directly in front of the term you're looking at. Okay? Alright, so finally, let's cancel those ones out. Finally, my last term is just negative 3n squared. I don't see any other n squareds here, so I'm just going to write that one and just drop it down. Now, one thing that is a little bit of an extra step that I'd like you to take, and I actually will probably give you a little bit of extra credit if you remember to do this. This is something that we want to do in the future, and it's called writing something in standard form. Okay? In standard form, when you write an answer, usually you'll see it in alphabetical order, so a lot of times like an A comes before a B, an X comes before a Y, but also the variable with the highest exponent, so in this case, since that's the highest exponent here, that term comes first. So written in standard form, this answer would be negative 3n squared. Then the next variable here is positive n. And then the 10 would come last. So the number term comes last. This here is the highest exponent. So it goes from highest to lowest in terms of the exponents. And then finally you always have a number that comes last, the number term. So the term without a variable, that comes last. And that's just called standard form. Okay, so you wouldn't be marked incorrect if you left your answer like this, if it's not in the correct standard form, but I would probably give you a little bonus credit if you were to write it in standard form like this. Okay, let's look at K now. In K, I see 15. I see a negative 6 that can combine with that, and that's the only two numbers that I see without a variable, so I take 15 minus 6 on my calculator, and I get the number 9. Then I see a 4y, it's positive, and this is not a like term since it has a c. The other like term here would be this 5y at the end. So in my calculator, since this is positive 4, I just type in 4, and this is a positive 5, so I type in plus 5. 4 plus 5 gives me a 9, so I attach the y to that, and I'm left with 9y. Cancel those two terms out, and I'm left with 8c minus 3c. So 8 minus 3 is what I type in my calculator, and I end up with 5, so I attach the c here. Now if I want to write this in standard form, like I said, usually you see it go in alphabetical order, so I'd like to put the c term first, so I have 5c plus 9y, and then the 9 would come last. Now this is the reason why I'm writing a plus sign here is because this is a positive 9, so that's why I'm writing a plus 9. And this would be my final answer here written in standard form. Again, if you wrote it like this, it won't be marked wrong. I just like it if you write it in standard form. Okay, I'd like you to pause the video now. You're going to try 4A through K on your own, and you can go back and look at your notes because these questions are very similar to the ones that we've already completed together. So please try these, and then when you guys check in your notes, we'll make sure that these are accurate. Alright, our next skill is actually going to combine two skills in one. So we're actually going to distribute and simplify by combining like terms in the same problem. So that's why we earlier distributed and then we combine like terms so that now we can practice doing both at the same time. So in this first example, I have 6 times 3x and 6 times negative 2. So I want to distribute the 6 only to what's inside the parentheses. A lot of times I'll see students incorrectly try to distribute all the way to that 8, but you don't want to do that because that 8 is not inside the parentheses. So we're only going to distribute the 6 to the inside of the parentheses terms. So I have 6 times 3x, that gives me 18x. 6 times negative 2 leaves me with negative 12. And then because that 8 here is not going to get distributed to, I'm just going to bring that 8 down. And now I look to try to simplify and combine like terms. Now this looks just like a problem that we were just working on with combining like terms. So again, I just look for anything with a variable with an x in it. Now since that's the only term with an x in it, I'm just going to drop that term down, and then I work on the next two terms. Negative 12 and 8 can be combined, so I have negative 12 plus 8, that's what I type right in my calculator, and I get negative 4. Now this is my final answer here, because these are not like terms. So I don't want to try to combine them, because they're not like terms. All right, now when we work on B, here I see two different parentheses, which means I'm going to distribute two different times. The first one, I'm going to distribute the 3 to both the 8 and to the negative 2, and then I'm going to distribute this negative 3 to the x and to the negative 5. So again, be careful that you don't try to distribute this 3 all over the place, because that's not what you want to do. These are two separate problems. You almost want to imagine like this is, cover that up and just work on that one at first, and then work on this one separately, okay? All right, so let's begin. Let's do 3 times 8x, that gives me 24x. 3 times negative 2 gives me negative 6. Then I'm going to work on the second set of parentheses here, this one. I'm going to distribute a negative 3 times x, that gives me negative 3x. And then I have to be careful about my sign here because negative 3 times negative 5 gives me a positive 15. Now I look to combine like terms, so I have 24x minus 3x. So in my calculator I type in 24 minus 3. That gives me 21, and then I attach the x. So 21x, cancel those out. Then I type in negative 6 plus 15, and that gives me a positive 9. Again, because those are not like terms, I don't simplify any further. I keep it as 21x plus 9. That's my final answer. Okay, in C, I see again two sets of parentheses, so I'm going to distribute two different times. Here I have a negative 1 out in front of the parentheses, so I'm going to write a 1 in there just to remind myself that I need to distribute that number. So I have negative 1 times 2, that gives me negative 2x. Negative 1 times 8 leaves me with negative 8. So really all that negative does on the outside of the parentheses, it just makes the inside terms change to their opposites. So it becomes negative 2x and negative 8. So if I had a parentheses in front of something like 3x minus 4, that would change to negative 3x, and plus 4, it changes to the opposite. So that's just a little shortcut for you if you want to take that shortcut later on. Alright, the next set of parentheses, I'm going to do negative 5 times x and negative 5 times negative 4. Negative 5 times x leaves me with negative 5x, and negative 5 times negative 4, again, be careful with your sign here because now it changes to positive, so I write that as plus 20. Now I'm going to combine like terms. The two terms that I combine here are negative 2x and negative 5x, because both of those have the same variable. So I just take that right in my calculator, negative 2 minus 5, and I end up with negative 7, so I attach the x to that. The next two terms here, negative 8 and positive, oops, sorry, I should cancel that out. Then I have negative 8 and positive 20. If I combine those two terms, in my calculator I just type in negative 8 plus 20, and I get plus 12, so positive 12. I write as plus 12. Alright, so the next section of problems here, I would like you guys to try on your own. There's 6 questions for you guys to do where you're combining and distributing. Okay, so work on these, pause the video, and then you'll check those in when you check in your notes.